Hey, folks, in this interview, I get to sit down with a veteran to the TWIP podcast, Mr. Andrew Bernstein. He's a Hall of Fame sports photographer. This is TWIP. Hey folks, welcome back to another episode of This Week in Photo. I'm your host, Frederick Van Johnson. Today, a return to the show of Andrew Bernstein. If you recall, several months ago, I did an interview with Andrew about his co-authoring of a book called The Mamba Mentality, How I Play, a book he authored with Kobe Bryant. So we're not talking about that. If you want to go check out that interview, we'll link to it in the show notes and the description for this episode. But instead, we're looking forward, and we're talking about some other projects that Andrew's working on and some interesting news he has with regard to his podcast. Andrew, welcome to the show, man. How are you doing?
Hey, Frederick. I'm doing great. Great to see you, man. Really, really good to connect again. Thank you.
Yeah, likewise. No, thank you for coming on. It's always good to chat with you. You know what I love? I love chatting with you because the first time we spoke, you know, the sort of pre-interview stuff that I do, the research and looking at the kudos, I was a little intimidated looking at all the stuff that you'd done, you know, like, okay, I got to interview this guy. And then you get on and, you know, you're just one of us, you know, just a normal guy. So, you know, and very humble. So I appreciate that a ton. So.
Thank you. I never want to be intimidating to anybody, but I appreciate you saying that. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, you know, intimidation comes with accolades and success, right? So, you know, it's just it's a side effect of that. Well, let's dive in. I know you have a packed day, so to make sure we get to the questions on my list. First of all, for people that may not have heard of you, Andrew Bernstein, what's you know, the accolades that I kind of foreshadowed a couple of seconds ago. Describe your career, your elevator pitch. If you're in one of those LA cocktail parties and people are like, "Hey, Andrew, what do you do? What do you tell them?"
Well, I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, and moved out here during the blizzard of '78. Never looked back, and that's the end of my elevator pitch. No, I took a passion for photography that I started when I was 14, with my dad giving me my first camera, and realized that was really my destiny to be a photographer in some way. So taking from my good friend Peter Guber's mantra that it started off as a dream to be a photographer, turned into a goal, a bona fide goal, when I decided to really kind of ramp up my desire to be a photographer by going to Art Center College of Design in Pasadena. And that was a major move because I was going to the University of Massachusetts at the time, lived my whole life up to that point on the East Coast. And then, you know, that goal became my passion to become a sports photographer. I had certain benchmark goals that I wanted to achieve in the business. And, you know, if that's my destiny, then so be it. So dreams plus goals equals destiny. But fast forward 40 years later, I'm still loving what I do. They still want me around. And I'm still cranking out some pretty good content when I get a chance to actually take a picture, which I haven't done in 4 months. So,
I know, right? I know.
Looking forward to that.
I know that I hear that a lot. Photographers, there's a lot of pent up demand for everything, not just taking photographs, but just getting back to being human, I guess, is what a lot of us are looking forward to. Before we dive into this stuff, I want to talk, you see that step and repeat behind you. It looks like Legends of Sport. Talk to me about that project, the Legends of Sport, because that kind of segues into the podcast news you have to share later.
Yeah, of course. Well, Legends of Sport is a content platform that I started with 3 other partners. The germ of it really started maybe 10, 12 years ago, but we got serious about it about 5 years ago. And we decided that there's a real void in the world of sports. There's so many sports radio, sports content, so many people talking about last night's score or last night's game, but legends kind of get lost in the shuffle, quite frankly. And we wanted to be able to perpetuate legends, to document, to really continue the conversation, to bring them back into the conversation in a lot of cases, and make legendary athletes, moments, teams, personalities relevant again, and keep it current and relate it to what's going on in the world of sports today. So we led off with a podcast. And now I'm in my third season of the podcast, where I sit down and I talk to people in the world of sports, athletes, owners, fans, whoever have made an impact in sports. And I have a different kind of take on it because I'm a working professional in the world of sports. Yeah. And, I have my own experience. And a lot of the guests I have are people that I've worked with and known for years and years and years. Magic, Kobe, Peter Guber, Oral Hershiser. I mean, I could name a lot. But we did 2 full seasons, and we were actively pursuing a bigger platform that could distribute us out and be a great partner. And the LA Times really saw us as a great option for them as well, because they have a really great podcast menu, but they were looking for a sports podcast. Our Legends kind of way of doing things really was interesting to them. So we have now partnered with the LA Times. We're co-produced and distributed by them. It's not exclusive, so you can still get your Legends of Sport podcast on Apple or Spotify, but the LA Times has become a great partner for us, and very, very excited about everything that can happen now from that partnership.
That is great. Congratulations on that, because that
Thank you.
Yeah, that from a podcaster, we're both podcasters and photographers, but from a podcaster photographer standpoint, you look at podcasting. From when I look at it, I've seen the evolution, from what the heck is a podcast all the way up through to, Joe Rogan selling his podcast to Spotify for $12 gazillion or something, right? Yeah. So the legitimacy, right? Yeah, good for him, And I look at this and I look at successes like you're having with signing a deal with the LA Times as just another mark in the legitimacy column for podcasting. So congratulations, man! Distribution is great.
Thank you. Yeah, it's all about really listeners, as you know. I mean, right. We have a very active and dynamic social media program. Our social media manager is based out in New Jersey, and he's pumping stuff out, multiple things a day. In addition to the audio podcast, we are now doing full videos, which are on our YouTube channel, Legends of Sport, and TikTok videos as well. Nice. So you can hear and you can see the full podcast, however you decide to consume it. And we have a blog, legendsofsport.blog, which we feed information out to the world every single day, this day in sports history, or we talk about this week's podcast guest, or all kinds of different subjects. And it's an interactive blog, so fans can interact with us and give us their opinions and give us topics to talk about.
That's great. Oh, that's cool. I love that. You're just building the empire over there, right? The content empire.
Yeah, right.
No, that's cool.
Frederick, I know that I can't be on the baseline forever, and although I love it, and I have no plans to leave the baseline, I have no set date in mind when I'm going to walk off the court forever. Like, Kobe decided he was done, and that was his farewell, 2016. But I enjoy doing this, and I enjoy being able to talk to friends and people and colleagues that I've known for years and years and years, and getting their story. And one of the things that I really enjoy, honestly, is finding out like what made that person who they are. What was the linchpin, who mentored them, what was that moment of discovery and epiphany that pushed you to become a great sports writer or a great Hall of Fame pitcher or a sports executive or whoever. And we all have those moments, right? So I want to share that and understand that about my guests and get that out to our audience. So that's been a lot of fun.
I love that. Well, cool. Let's switch gears a little bit and talk about the current. Well, we talked a little bit about the current state of the world, and as part of that, lots of businesses and organizations are reopening, and the NBA is one of them that have an alleged planned reopening. Can you talk about that a little bit and what your involvement is there?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's in full swing. Both the NBA and the WNBA have these restart bubbles going on, back to play, return to play. The NBA's bubble is in Orlando. 22 teams are there. And the WNBA is restarting their season down in Bradenton, about 100 miles west of Orlando. And I think games are going to start the end of next week, or the end of July. They're going to play 8 games to seed the playoffs. 16 teams will come out of that on the NBA side, and then we're going to start a regular 4 rounds of playoffs, just like we always have. It's going to be obviously a huge difference. There's not going to be any fans there. The guys are not going to be traveling. Everything's going to be in one place, basically neutral site. So home court advantage will be taken out. The whole energy from the fans will be taken out. Even the broadcasting is going to be different. I think the way we photographers are going to cover it is going to be a little different. So I'm kind of anxious to get down there. I get down there the middle of August, and I'll be there for the duration, which if the finals go 7 games, it could be the middle of October.
Yeah. What does that look like, though? From a let's call it a feet on the court standpoint, as a photographer. You've shot literally hundreds and hundreds of games before, and this will be the first time you're entering in sort of this new arena, right? What does it look like from a photographer standpoint? Not much has changed, or are there market differences?
Well, one of the biggest differences will be if we're allowed to shoot on the court where we normally are. Now, keep in mind that social distancing is a huge issue and a giant protocol for the NBA. So keeping the players socially distant from us, keeping us socially distant from them. So if we're on the court, that might not be within the limits of social distancing. So I think the games haven't started yet. So I'm waiting to see what my colleagues will be up against when they start shooting games before I get there. There's a couple of photographers down there already. My presumption is that we will probably be off the court just a little bit, that we will be either on a riser or some kind of elevated situation. So that'll be a little different because we're not there on the court. But the way we, myself and my cohorts will approach it will be the same. I mean, we'll do the same setup of cameras, the remote cameras that we normally do. Preparation will be the same, might be, tweak it a little bit, but the workflow will be very, very similar in terms of tethering photos back from the cameras and having editors on site, but also back in NBA Photos in New Jersey, feeding that out to Getty so that the photos that we shoot get out to the world. So that part of it is not really going to change. I think just a few tweaks as to location where we are, having to deal with this sort of bubble situation, being a neutral site, that's all going to be different.
Yeah. I wonder with that, some of looking at your shots, some of the iconic shots that you've created, a lot of them have the roaring crowd in the background, with the athlete caught at the perfect, moment above the net or whatever. I want to see what these shots look like now, right? Without the crowd back there. How do you and that's part of your composition, right? You're like, okay, let's get this crowd and the athlete right there. From an artist standpoint, do you foresee any big differences in composition? Is it going to be more close-up tight shots versus wide shots showing the expanse of the auditorium? What do you think?
That's a great question. I don't know.
We'll figure it out when we get there, right?
I saw that Major League Baseball is going to have cutouts of fans in the seats, like actual. So I don't know if the NBA is going to do that or if they're planning big video screens or something. I mean, we're always very, very conscious of having empty seats behind. I mean, in this particular case, we don't have a choice. But you're right. There might be a different way to have to shoot so that we minimize that because we don't want empty seats to be a distraction per se. The action is really what we're trying to get, and sometimes it is a distraction. But we'll have to see when I get down there.
Yeah, no, for sure. I wonder if in the future technology will help solve that. Not that we'll be in this particular bubble forever, but technology from the NFL, for example, where they can do real-time keying of artwork on the field and that sort of thing. Why can't they just key some fans into the into the stands there?
And pump some crowd noise in, and and almost be the real thing. So
exactly.
I don't know. There's definitely
we'll
going to be some stories to be told from this whole experience, Frederick. I tell you, it's going to be hopefully, God willing, knock it on wood, that it'll be a once in a lifetime experience for all of us.
Yeah, I think an unforeseen, for lack of a better phrase, benefit of all this is you are a pioneer. You and the folks that are going out there are pioneers. This literally has never been done before, right? So you're literally writing the book on how to do photography in an environment like this. So take note for others, because you're the Lewis and Clark of the pandemic and photography. High-end photography during a pandemic. So I think it's important.
That's interesting. It'll definitely be stuff to talk about for years and years to come. That's for sure.
Yep. That's great. Okay, so what's next for Andrew? What's on the roadmap? You've conquered the podcasting world. You've conquered the sports photography world. Sure. What's next for you?
Well, I'm continuing to do some online events around the Mamba mentality, trying to keep Kobe's legacy out there to the world through the book that we did together. So I have a couple of things that I'm doing with that. And through Legends of Sport, we are really chomping at the bit to branch out. We have some events planned. We had some actual events planned, and then the pandemic put an end to that. But we're exploring ideas with certain clients about virtual events, about live events once all of this is over with, God willing, early next year, and we're moving forward. I mean, the Times has a very robust plan as well, and we hopefully we can collaborate and fit into each other's plans. So we're excited about that. We have constant conversations with them. I'm excited about continuing the 16-week block that I'm doing right now. So we're leading off this relationship with the Times with a 16-week block where I'm going to be doing an episode a week called Restarting the Clock, and each episode will be devoted to sort of loosely what's going on in the bubbles of WNBA and NBA, but with our legends slant. So we'll have legendary athletes and sportscasters and people who can really relate to what the guys are going through and the women in both bubbles, but from their experience. So we're going to be talking about legendary rivalries and legendary finals and legendary coaching matchups and stuff like that. So I'm excited about that. Our content plan is coming together as we speak. I'm getting to talk to some great people. We're we're in week 3, I believe, of the 16-week block. So doing about half of the block here in my office in the LA area, and the other half once I get to the bubble in Orlando.
Yeah, I love that. Like you said at the beginning, what did you say when we started? You said a phrase that I was going to write down and I didn't write down. You said dreams plus something. What was
goals. Dreams plus goals equals destiny. And that's straight out of Peter Guber's book, Tell It to Win, which I recommend to everybody. He is an amazing voice and been a great friend and mentor to me as I've been building this Legends of Sport platform. But dreams plus goals equals destiny. Like you, we had a dream to be a photographer. In some way, shape, or form. Something kind of got our juices flowing when we started being a photographer. Maybe around the same age, probably, teenager. And then that dream, at some point, if you're going to take it seriously, that dream has to turn into a goal. What is the goal? The goal is to become a professional sports photographer, in my case. How do I get there? Who do I have to talk to? Where do I have to go? And like Kobe would say, with constant curiosity, a relentless pursuit, all that stuff in the Mamba mentality, which he was all about. And it has to turn into an obsession, which is, the first pillar of the Mamba mentality. You got to be obsessed with what you do. Yeah. So those two elements, dreams plus goals, if that's your destiny, then that's where you're supposed to be, and I guess that's where I'm supposed to be, because 40 years later, I'm still doing it.
That's right. That's right. One of the things I took away from that first interview we did, and I've used it a lot in conversations with other people, is, the debate around being a workaholic. Right. Remember we talked about that, about being a workaholic, sure, and how sure. I think you said Kobe said that the phrase workaholic wasn't necessarily a negative, right? It's it's right. Having that relentless pursuit to the goal that you want to do, and who are these outside forces to tell you that you're working too hard towards your goal? Mm-hmm. So I appreciate that. That was words that ring in my head almost daily. So thank you for that.
Yeah. Well, workaholic, it becomes a problem when you can't stop, and then when there's like any addiction, really, when you can't stop, that's when you got to seek help, right? So you have to learn how to turn it off, and I honestly learned it from him. I learned it from Magic, other people that have been driven in their careers, that you can turn it off. You can be obsessed with what you do. I mean, Kobe had a great quote. I think we talked about it the last time, that he said very famously, if you're not obsessed with what you do, we don't speak the same language. Yeah. So that's why he and I bonded, very, very early, because I think we saw in each other this obsession with each other's craft, that was unsaid, but it kind of had a bond between us. And fast forward, we did the book together, and he told me flat out, he goes, man, you're crazy as I am. You're like as obsessed as I am with what you do. So, that was wonderful. But what I learned from him, and especially later in his career when he started to become a dad, and I would see him interact with his girls after a game, was that he knew how to flip the switch. I mean, he knew how to go from being the Mamba, being this assassin on the court, totally obsessed with what he was doing for that period of time, and then turn that completely off and just be daddy, and once he's walking out of the arena, he's done being the Mamba. He's like hanging, like Superman used to hang the suit back up in the closet. He's done, and he's just going to be daddy. And that doesn't mean he's not thinking about his job and rehabbing injuries or taking care of himself or looking at game film. But there's a time when you have to be able to balance, and I wasn't very good at that for probably 2/3 of my career. Work-life balance was definitely a problem, but I learned that from him, quite frankly, and watching him. And now, at my advanced age, I'm able to, I think, balance things a little bit better.
Your advanced age, come on. All right, well, good. Well, let's wrap this up. I want to thank you again for coming on, and it's always inspiring talking to you. I love talking to photographers that are doing positive things and pressing forward, right? And have that level of obsession and commitment to the stuff that they're doing, which is Andrew Bernstein. So. Thank you so much for coming on. If people want to check out the stuff that you're working on, go check out the podcast, any of the stuff that we talked about, what's a good place or places for them to go?
Well, there's a few. I mean, the podcast can be found on any major podcast platform, Apple, Spotify. We like to point people to the LA Times platform on their app, which is free. Online, you can find it, but anywhere you get your podcast. So it's the Legends of Sport podcast. I also, while we're talking about photography and photographers and interviewing photographers, Frederick, we just ran a series called Legendary Photographers, which we interrupted for this 16-week block, but I'm going to get back to. But I've had some amazing photographers on it: Atiba Jefferson, Walter Yost, Lucy Nicholson. I mean, people that Pulitzer Prize winners. So we're going to continue that. That's going to be a thread that will continue when we get past the bubble situation and sort of into our regular routine. So check that out. Our Instagram is at Legends of Sport. Twitter at legends_of_sport, our blog, legendsofsport.blog, and our YouTube and TikTok channels, Legends of Sport. So check out the videos, which are the full videos of the full audio podcast. So, and our editor is great because he sticks photos in there and all kinds of, details that you don't really get from the audio podcast. So that's a lot of fun. And then my photography, at ADB Photo Inc. on Instagram. So, and we do a lot of kind of cross-pollination there between, my Instagram and Legends of Sport.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. That's perfect. Well, thank you, man. I appreciate you coming on again. You'll have to come back on again and give us a debrief on how that first socially distanced sports photography session went. I'm curious.
Right.
I want to see the shots, and I want to hear what you have to say about getting those shots. So,
absolutely, my friend. It'd be my pleasure, and thanks again for having me on. Love talking to you. So keep doing what you do because what you're doing is great. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Andrew, have a good day, and I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, man. Take care.
Okay.
Bye.
This is Twitter.